If you had 72 hours to change the world,
Dave, we need to leave right now.
what would you do?
Over that ridge is Syria.
Over the next 8 minutes, we're going to attempt a social media experiment that could change millions of lives. My name's Stephen, although most people know me as Dynamo. In 2011, I got my big break with a TV show called Magician Impossible. The internet played a huge part in its success, and before I knew it, I'd created an online community of followers that spread around the world.
We love you, sir, we love you!
Back then, social media was in its infancy. There was no fake news, and many people felt that this could be a force for incredible change. But that same year, a social media uprising turned into a war that would leave over 500,000 people dead, many of them children.
Tonight I want to talk to you about Syria.
The scale of the problem was so overwhelming that I felt completely powerless. And over time, the horrific images coming out of Syria faded, lost in the sea of content on my social feeds. So like many of us, I sat back and did nothing, and life was pretty good. Until the 2nd of September 2015. The image of 3-year-old Alan Kurdi washed up on that beach shocked the world.
The tragic death became the symbol of the refugee crisis.
It was a huge wake-up call. How could we have let this happen? Alan could have been my own child, he could have been any of ours, and in a strange way, I felt like we'd all let him down. A few months later, I was pointed to a news story by the charity Their World. It outlined how one of the biggest reasons families made the journey across the sea was to get their kids into school. It turns out there were over 1.7 million children fleeing for their lives and living as refugees. So when in 2016 governments from all over the world came together to pledge money for the crisis, it seemed like there was hope.
Today's conference has seen $10 billion pledged.
And the way they were talking, you'd think they'd solve the problem overnight.
1 million children currently not in school will have access to education by the end of the next school year.
This is truly nothing short of historic.
And that, I think, is a good and vital day's work.
Yeah, it would be a good and vital day's work, apart from one thing. They didn't keep their promise. Out of the 1 million children guaranteed school placements, over half of them would be left behind. And the consequences would be devastating. I wanted to find out for myself how this would actually affect the Syrian children on the ground, so I headed to Lebanon. Talking to my translator, Anas, I started to realise that getting the answers I needed had some real risks.
There is potential for further violence every day, by every single day. And especially in the Bekaa Valley, in the camps, that region is considered one of the most dangerous places in Lebanon.
With just a few phone calls, I had refugee charities, journalists, aid workers and schools all eager to show me the knife edge they were operating on.
We provide services to Syrian refugees. This is the map of Lebanon, and here are the services in each location and what we provide. So we're going to Bekaa. We're going to this area here.
The Al-Auda camp sits in the Bekaa Valley, right on the Syrian border. Beyond the conditions, the first thing that hits you when you arrive is the amount of children hanging around with nothing to do. And little did I know, this was just the tip of the iceberg.
So if these children don't get into school ever, what's the worst case scenario?
These children will become a lost generation, not able to build their own future. They might become homeless children.
And they can be taken advantage of as well, right?
Yes, sadly. Child labour, murder.
The little money the governments had delivered was being put to incredible use.
Welcome!
The ones that aren't in school at the moment, they're very vulnerable to different forms of exploitation. Child labour, we hear that many of them are out working in the fields, back-breaking work in textile factories, really, really hard. And that's why we want them back in school. So not only are they learning, it's also a really safe space for them as well. And that's why it's so important. It just allows them to be children.
Children not receiving education, it would put Syria like 100 years back. People will have to continually struggle for the rest of their lives because they can't keep up with the world. Syria would suffer massively.
How long have you lived here? How many years?
5.
5. And where did you live before here?
In Syria.
In Syria. Yeah. Do you go to school, madrasa?
بتروحي على المدرسة?
Hey.
Yes.
Yes. What do you want to be when you're older?
مهندسة معمارية.
An architect.
An architect?
Yeah.
عشان أعمر سوريا.
So she can rebuild Syria, so that's amazing.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. These children aren't just refugees. They're the future lawyers, doctors and architects that will be needed to rebuild Syria. And the most astounding thing was that they had a tried and tested solution. A way to get all these kids into school right now. The double shift school system is when a school splits the day in two, with the local children going to school first. Then the second shift of the day starts for the Syrian children.
This school is the epitome of a success story. They're running the double shift schooling system. They've got amazing teachers who are teaching the Syrian children, and they're seeing massive improvements in their behaviour, and they're giving these children hope.
In the last days of my trip, having experienced just a glimpse of their resilience and the immediate dangers around these children,
We need to leave right now.
it was really hard not to feel guilty, leaving for the safety of London. And with so much time to reflect on what I'd seen.
When you were here before, you couldn't look you in the eye. You're just like an angel. Your skin makes me cry. You float like a feather in a beautiful world. I wish I was special. You're so very special. But
We live in a world of fake news and social algorithms, where we can't tell fact from fiction. But this situation is as real as it gets. And we have a choice, to continue ignoring it or to do something.
what the hell am I doing here? I don't belong here.
Every child not in school is a child on the other side of a broken promise. So I've made a promise to myself. I'm not going to let it happen again. Right now, there are over 500,000 children who desperately need to be in full-time education by the start of this school year. I have a plan, but I need all of your help. So here goes. Next week, the world's leaders will meet again. So I'm heading to Brussels to hold them to account. But in order to stand a chance, I'll need a virtual army by my side. And this is where you come in. Over the next 72 hours, we're going to harness the power of social media to get this video seen by at least 10 million people and create a groundswell that sets the agenda at the UN summit. I'll be contacting every news show, celebrity and influencer possible to help spread our message around the world. With 3 simple actions: sharing this video, spreading the hashtag and signing the petition, we're going to create a movement so widespread and so loud that for once, these children's voices are heard. If we can pull this off, it'll be the closest thing to real magic. The rest is up to you.